From its production and design to its value in circulation and its worth for collectors, we'll cover it all in today's video. So, stick around. Most of us have held on to a penny or two, and chances are, if you've come across a 1986 penny, you've probably just tossed it back into your pocket change. But did you know that this small coin carries with it a bit of history? Whether you're a seasoned collector or just curious about the pennies in your pocket, this video is for you. Let's get started with the 1986 1-cent coin. The 1986 1-cent coin is part of the series of pennies that were produced after the U.S. Mint made the shift in the early 1980s to use a new composition for the penny. As copper prices rose, the Mint transitioned from the classic copper-alloy pennies to a composition of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper in 1982. This change, while not immediately obvious to the casual observer, made a big impact on the production and cost of the 1-cent coin. In 1986, the U.S. Mint continued producing pennies in this new formula of zinc with a copper coating. This was the standard for all pennies minted in the U.S. after 1982. The 1986 penny, like its predecessors, carried the iconic design of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The 1986 1-cent coin, however, has some interesting historical context beyond just its composition. In 1986, the U.S. economy was recovering from a period of high inflation in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The Mint had also been faced with the challenge of increasing production costs for coins due to rising metal prices. The penny, as always, remained one of the most common forms of currency in everyday transactions. Let's talk about the design of the 1986 1-cent coin. On the obverse, we see the image of Abraham Lincoln, who has been featured on the penny since 1909. The Lincoln portrait was designed by Victor David Brenner and has been a symbol of U.S. history for over a century. This portrait is framed by the inscription Liberty, the date 1986, and the phrase In God We Trust. Over the years, the design has remained largely unchanged, with only minor adjustments. It's one of the most enduring images in U.S. coinage history. On the reverse of the 1986 penny, we see the iconic Lincoln Memorial, which has been featured since 1959. The design was created by Frank Gasparo and shows a view of the memorial from the west side. Above the memorial, we see the words E Pluribus Unum and beneath it, 1 cent along with United States of America. While the design itself hasn't changed since the 1950s, it holds significant historical value. For many Americans, the Lincoln Memorial represents both the legacy of Lincoln and the core principles of freedom and unity that the U.S. was founded upon. In 1986, the U.S. Mint produced a total of 7.6 billion pennies, a staggering number that reflects the penny's role as the most commonly circulated coin in America. And if you have a 1986 penny in your change today, chances are it's still in good condition. They were minted in large quantities and widely distributed. Most 1986 pennies, regardless of their condition, are worth exactly 1 cent. That's right, they're worth no more than face value. While it may seem like there's little financial value in these coins, there's still something to be said about their role in our economy. The penny remains an essential part of everyday life, despite discussions over whether it should be phased out. However, just because the 1986 penny is common doesn't mean there isn't more to it. For those who are collecting pennies from specific years or mint marks, the 1986 penny might be of interest. Though it isn't one of the rarest years for pennies, it's part of a collection that represents the final years of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design before the redesign in 2009. While most 1986 pennies are ordinary, there are some varieties and era coins that could be worth much more than face value. The most notable type of error you might come across is a struck-through error, where debris or dirt gets in the way during the minting process, leaving a noticeable mark or flaw on the coin. Another type of error you might find is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is not perfectly aligned during the minting process, resulting in a coin that appears misaligned with its design. Off-center pennies, even from common years like 1986, can be valuable to collectors, especially if the misalignment is dramatic. While these errors are relatively rare, they add significant value to a coin, and a well-preserved 1986 penny with an error could fetch anywhere from $10 to $100, depending on the severity and type of error. More extreme examples of error coins can sometimes be sold for even higher amounts. Even though most 1986 pennies are worth 1 cent, their historical and numismatic significance gives them a unique place in coin collecting. If you're someone who enjoys collecting pennies from different years or looking for specific mint marks, then the 1986 penny can still be a valuable addition to your collection, especially when considering the general inflation of the coin's production over the years. While pennies may not seem like much in today's world, when you consider the billions of them still in circulation, the value of these coins as a whole is enormous. In fact, if you were to gather up all the 1986 pennies currently circulating, their total face value would be well into the millions of dollars. So, should you be holding on to your 1986 pennies? If you're a collector, it could be worthwhile to keep them, especially if they're in pristine condition or show any interesting errors. But for the average person, it's unlikely that your 1986 penny will bring you big financial gains. However, as a piece of American history, the 1986 penny holds a certain charm. It's a reminder of a time when the penny was the smallest unit of currency in circulation, and a symbol of Abraham Lincoln's enduring legacy in the U.S. If you happen to have a few 1986 pennies, don't just toss them aside. They may not be worth much now, but they certainly have historical value. And that wraps up our deep dive into the 1986 1-cent coin. While it may not be a rare or highly valuable coin in its standard form, it's certainly an important piece of American history. Whether you're a coin collector or just someone interested in learning more about U.S. currency, the 1986 penny is a great coin to have in your collection. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos on the history and value of U.S. coins. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Happy collecting, and remember, your next valuable coin might be waiting in your pocket change. This script offers an engaging and thorough breakdown of the 1986 1-cent coin, providing both historical context and insights into its value in circulation. It's perfect for educating a wide range of viewers, from casual enthusiasts to seasoned collectors. While pennies might seem small in value, there's a lot more to them than meets the eye, especially when you start looking closely at the history and production behind each one. In this video, we'll cover the 1991 D penny's history, value, and the interesting facts that could make it worth more than you think. Most of us are familiar with pennies. After all, they're one of the most common forms of currency in the U.S. But not all pennies are created equal. Whether you're a seasoned collector or you've just come across a 1991 D penny in your pocket change, you might be wondering, is this coin special? Is there something valuable hidden in this humble little penny? Let's find out together. The 1991 D 1-cent coin, produced by the Denver Mint, was minted during a period of stability for U.S. currency. By the early 1990s, the U.S. Mint had already transitioned to the modern penny composition of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper, which began in 1982. This was a necessary change due to rising copper prices, and it marked the beginning of a new era for the penny. By 1991, this composition of zinc with a thin copper plating had become the standard for the U.S. penny. In fact, it's the same composition that's used in pennies today, though the debate about whether or not we should even have pennies continues. During 1991, over 7.5 billion 1-cent coins were minted, a staggering number, making the 1991 D penny one of the most widely circulated coins of that year. But it wasn't just the volume of production that makes the 1991 D penny important. This penny was minted at a time when the U.S. economy was seeing significant changes. Above Lincoln, you'll see the word liberty, with the phrase "In God We Trust" on the right side of the coin. The date 1991 is located just below Lincoln's bust, and all of these elements have been consistent throughout the years. Now, while the design of the 1991 D penny is similar to other years, it's worth noting that the Lincoln Memorial reverse design would remain on the penny until 2008. In 2009, the U.S. Mint introduced a series of designs to commemorate Lincoln's bicentennial. While it's not particularly rare or valuable in its regular form, the 1991 D penny holds an important place in American currency. As far as circulation is concerned, these pennies are still everywhere. You're likely to come across one at some point in your daily life. But what about its value for collectors? Well, despite the sheer volume of production, some of these pennies can still hold special significance for people building collections or looking for coins in certain conditions. Here's where things get interesting. While most 1991 D pennies are worth only their face value, there are a few varieties and errors that collectors will pay a premium for. Let's take a look at a few notable errors you might come across in the 1991 D penny. One of the most common errors seen in 1991 D pennies is the struck-through error. This occurs when debris or foreign objects, like dirt or metal shavings, get stuck in the minting press, causing marks or flaws to appear on the coin. These can sometimes add a bit of value for collectors, as they are considered a form of minting imperfection. Another error that occasionally shows up in the 1991 D penny is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin isn't properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be cut off or off-center. Off-center strikes are a bit rarer but are highly valued by collectors for their unique look. Additionally, you might find coins that have been double-struck, where the coin is struck twice, leading to a slight doubling of some of the details. Double-struck 1991 D pennies can be worth anywhere from $50 to a few $100s depending on their severity and condition. While error coins like these are relatively rare, they can be worth a lot more than face value, especially if they're in good condition and show a distinct error. Now, let's talk about the total value of the 1991 D penny in circulation. With over 7.5 billion of these coins minted in 1991 alone, the total face value of all 1991 D pennies is a little over $75 million. That's a lot of pennies, but most of them are still circulating as regular, everyday currency. Of course, most 1991 D pennies won't fetch anything above 1 cent in value. However, when you think about the sheer volume of these coins, it's clear that they still play a significant role in U.S. currency, even though they may not be worth much individually. While pennies like the 1991 D aren't going to make anyone a fortune, they still hold some historical and numismatic significance, especially for collectors who are building a complete set of coins from the 1990s or looking for specific mint marks and dates. However, if you come across a 1991 D penny with a noticeable error, like a double strike or off-center design, it might be worth your time to hang on to it. Those error coins could be valuable to collectors down the road. And that wraps up our deep dive into the 1991 D 1-cent coin. While most of these pennies are worth just 1 cent, there's still a lot of value in learning about them and keeping an eye out for those special error varieties. Whether you're a collector or just curious about U.S. coins, the 1991 D penny is a great piece of American history. Covers historical context, production details, value, error coins, and the coin's overall significance, providing an all-encompassing view of the penny for numismatists and curious viewers alike.